And Stephen K. Peeples here. We're speaking with Marty Jourard of the Motels, continuing our series of videos about the first 5 Motels albums. And this particular trip, we're going to talk about Careful, the second album that was released in June 1980. And it was a follow-up, obviously, to the debut album that was out in September of '79. And so, Marty, can you kind of pick up with the release of the first album, what happened with the touring after that, how the first album was received, and kind of lead us into the sessions for the beginning for the second album?
Sure. Well, that can be fairly brief. The first album, as we recorded it in a couple weeks, did overdubs for a couple. It came out. It, I think, got to 179 on the Billboard album chart. It was our little toe in the water. We did a tour, Fly East on First Motels tour, September 12th. And then a month later, we went on this European tour. We went to England. We came back 2 weeks later. Then we did another American tour. And in November, then we played 10 more shows in December and played American Bandstand December 15th. I guess it was Total Control, or I don't know what we had. Can't remember. And that was the end of 1979. And for my brother Jeff, who had co-founded this version of the Motels with Martha, it was the end of his relationship with the Motels, because December 31st, he was fired from the band by Martha, who immediately brought her boyfriend, Tim McGovern, in as the guitarist. And Tim McGovern had quit the Pop on December 31st. So it wasn't exactly a coincidence. He became the guitar player in the Motels January 1st, 1980. So that was 79.
Well, so what was the band's reaction, the rest of the band's reaction to that? And it's your brother, for crying out loud. You got canned. So what's up with that?
Well, whatever problems were going on, and they're not even that interesting or unique in bands, were going on between my brother and Martha. They were not going on between Martha or anyone else in the band, or Jeff or me, or Jeff and anybody in the band. So it was absolutely their thing. And Martha's personal life and professional life have always been sort of a hazy combination. So when Tim came along and she met Tim, the first thing she was attracted to was his incredible musicianship. I can tell you today that he was one of the greatest musicians I've worked with. He's just great. It wasn't like, oh no, this horrible guy's coming in and he's Martha's boyfriend. He was a great musician. But we weren't happy about it because we didn't see any problem with the lineup before. Like, why is this happening? Now, I had to deal with the brother thing, but that was my problem. But I do remember the first rehearsal with Tim was this crazy drunken celebration of Martha and Tim, and it was super loud, and he was playing all of his Jimi Hendrix licks, and it was just, yeah, I'm into Motels. And I remember, I can say this now because it doesn't bother me now, but in 1980, I just threw my synth in the back of my 1971 Capri with light body damage on the rear quarter panel. I had this beater car and drove home, and I was just furious. And we worked it out, me and Jeff, eventually. We're fine. But it was unpleasant. But so much unpleasantness goes on in bands that's non-musical related that we don't need to beat it to death. But that did happen, right exactly at the end of '79 and beginning in 1980.
Well, in this case, those changes definitely informed not only the lineup of the band, but the musical direction of the band. So kind of tell us a little bit about how Tim coming into the group changed or altered or modified, or how it affected the sound of the Motels from there.
Tim was a very dominant personality, personally and musically. I can't sit around pondering what the Motels would have been like our second album had the lineup not changed. That's pointless. But he was chock full of ideas. He'd already written several songs that he played in the pop. He was a tremendous drummer. He had interesting ideas. He got really interesting guitar sounds. And so did Jeff, my brother. He got phenomenal guitar sounds. Both of them were tone meisters, really electric guitar tone, seriously good at it. So when he came in the band and I calmed down a little bit, which took me a while, I realized he was really bringing a lot, and just sheer capability. And he had a sense of humor too, which is nice, real goofy. So we started, the first thing I noticed is we started rehearsing because we had a new guitarist. This has nothing to do with making an album. We were rehearsing, and I'm looking here, give you an idea of how quick this happened. That happened New Year's Eve, suddenly, New Year's Day, 1980. Now we've got a new guitar player and so on. Well, the next, January 7th, we started rehearsing at Capitol Studio C. We were just rehearsing because we wanted to play a show. We had a new band. It didn't sound too good at first, but it never does. I'm sure even the Stones sound a little rough, maybe, when they first start. And we rehearsed for a couple weeks, and somehow Capitol let us use their room, so we didn't even have to pay to rehearse. We were down there, and we had our first.
I'm going to interject. I'm really bummed because I knew you guys were down there. I was upstairs on the 9th floor, and it was Carter. Carter had this like, "Don't you guys dare bother my band," kind of thing, you know. So
right,
we left you alone. But it was very tempting to stop in and see how you were doing. But I'm sure, as we've talked about before, that would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
So
it's not a spectator sport.
No.
So we had our first gig at Wong's West. Now at this point, Madame Wong's, which is a very well-known new wave club that a lot of bands played and then got signed from.
That was on January 31st, right?
Yeah, 1980.
Yeah.
She'd opened a club called Wong's West. It was on Pico, I believe, in West LA.
Yeah.
It was a big square nothing room. It was just a room. It was like, it might as well have been a banquet room at some big hotel. So we did that, and then we rehearsed at a place called Stone Fox. Then February 1980, we started recording at Sunset Sound, which is cool because we'd made our first album there, and it was just so not easy to just show up and go, oh, it's here again.
Right.
I'm just looking here to be brief. February 1980, we recorded for 2 weeks. Then we did overdubs the third week. Then in March, I've got Crybaby, March 4th, Crybaby. We recorded that. I was breaking up with my girlfriend somewhere in there, which came about the song Careful. Crybaby, Careful, and Bonjour Baby were the first 3 songs. I co-wrote these 3 with Michael Goodrow, the bassist. And I found myself in the wonderful situation of being asked to write songs for an album we were recording. Carter said, we've got 5 songs already recorded. They must have been, well, they're obviously Martha's songs, and Tim had a song. You go in there and write songs. So me and Michael Goodrow went in the drum isolation room. We kind of lit up and just free associated ideas. And he was as goofy as me in that way. And we came up with 3 songs. I don't know how long it took, maybe a couple weeks.
Well, and all 3 of them were kind of rooted in your breakup that was going on at the time. So
no, one of them was.
I'm sorry.
Well, I can't analyze it too deeply, but you'd be amazed at what relationships generate artistically, or not amazed. I mean, Bob Dylan was making some comment about some girl he knew in high school and how it's affected him his whole life writing songs. We're talking about Bob Dylan there.
You take the inspiration where it comes from, you know, where you can get it.
It comes from pain a lot of the time.
Well, in this case, yeah, I mean, Cry Baby and Bonjour Baby.
Well, okay. We can cover this pretty quick. Bonjour Baby was basically a throwaway. I don't even know what it means, and I co-wrote it with Michael. But we just had this playful way of doing it. We'd both listen to the song called Oliver's Army by Elvis Costello.
Right.
We were huge Costello fans. So if you listen to the piano intro to Oliver's Army or the keyboard intro, and you listen to the keyboard intro to Bonjour Baby, they might have similarities and they might not. You tell me. I basically took the feel of that, which I loved. But we were just throwing out these crazy little, almost like poetry, just blank verse phrases and images. Wet night, street light, Curtis, night train. I was talking about King Curtis in his song Night Train, but it's Curtis Night Train. So you go, well, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything, but that's where I got it. And then we had to get Martha to try to pronounce bonjour properly. So when we played this in France later, how do you really say bonjour that I don't sound like an idiot?
Yeah.
So there was that song. Cry Baby, I had come up with that lick on a guitar, an acoustic guitar, da 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 da, and I turned it into a prophet, was a harpsichord sound with the echo on it. But I had also been listening. This is where some musicians get ideas. They listen to other songs and they don't steal the specific thing. They borrow the overall feel. There's a song by Thin Lizzy called Old Flame, which is a beautiful song. And the way that a guitar lick would be played, and then there'd be a line sung, and then the guitar lick would play, and then there'd be another line just feeding the guitar lick in a line. I just thought that was the greatest idea. And I took that concept and I applied it to Cry Baby.
It kind of becomes a conversation between the singer and the musician.
Yeah. And in Old Flame, they've got this guitar lift, da 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 da. There's a girl I remember, da 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 da. I'm long ago, da da da. She was an old flame of mine. So in Cry Baby, da 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 da. It's not what it seems to be, da 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 da. Please don't be mean to me, and so on. I thought Thin Lizzy was the bomb. I still do.
Yeah, great. Talk about big fat guitar sounds. They had a great guitar sound.
Yeah, they had Phil Lynott.
Yeah.
He had everything I liked in a rock band. Now, careful to conclude our little trifecta here. This girl I was going with, so my first real girlfriend, she really wanted to jump into it. She wanted to get married, and she was 19 or 20, and I was slightly older, and I was in a rock band. I said, no, I don't want to do that. But we're still, and she goes, oh, Jourard, you're so careful. You're so careful. She kept saying that. She got really mad. And I went, careful. So I came up with the song, or me and Michael did. We're in there. I go, what if you had a song that the first three chords were just three major chords right next to each other, which nobody does because it isn't really musical. The third chord would usually be a minor chord. So we go F major, G major, A major, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So, and me and Goodrow just kept trading off lines. I think he came up with I need. I think, well, that's a good opening line. Everybody can relate to I need.
Yeah.
And I think I came up with, well, you need. And then we thought, well, how about, listen, I understand that. And it becomes this sort of existential discussion. And then Brian Glasscock came up with the line, can't you see you're very not? He's English. He just had a different way of using English. And we pieced it together. And it does have there's a thought behind it. It's a conflict between two parties and of a romantic nature. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. And the Prophet keyboard back then, it almost handed you ideas, musical ideas. I just need to mention, when you bought a synthesizer back then and now, it wasn't blank. When you buy a piano, there it sits. But a synthesizer had all of these presets, factory presets, to show you the sounds. This is a string sound. This is a brass sound. These are sounds we don't know what they are, so we're going to make up crazy names for them. I think Ben Montench told me there was a sound on his Oberheim called Box of Pups. If you push it down, it sounded like barking, box of puppies. So on my synth, the Prophet had this sound that if I went like this, it sounded like a cuckoo clock. And that was the lick in Careful. And there were other sounds.
It's better than a click track.
Yes. And when you ran through these sounds, they would inspire ideas that you come up with because of the sound. you wouldn't be playing blues licks on a sound that sounds like a cuckoo clock. So that was a part of it in a funny way. It didn't give you a keyboard hook, but it suggested one if you had that kind of mind, and I did, and others did. So it came with 48 sounds, and I in later years I thought, oh yeah, I did all this heavy modification, and I did change a few. I'm like Only the Lonely. I started with something and it went off into the sound that became that Only the Lonely sound. But that cuckoo clock sound was pretty much a straight preset. And I know that there's a sound on when you bought a Prophet that Greg Hawkes lifted straight off of it for Let's Go.
Uh-huh.
It's like sound 8, but that they didn't come up with that lick. That's the second half of it.
Exactly. It's not just the sound, it's the riff, it's the lick, it's the note.
Right. But that was one of the great things about synthesizers, is that they triggered ideas. Whereas if they said there's a piano, you better have an idea, because the piano doesn't have any ideas. It just notes.
Well, it's just kind of the later iteration of the old Wurlitzer organ that would be in your grandmother's parlor, that had a couple of presets for and the cha-cha beat and different rhythms that you could play your Wurlitzer organ over. I remember that when I was a kid here in a neighbor that had one of those.
Yeah, a lot of cha-cha-cha music.
Yeah.
Lowry but there's some people on YouTube, you can hear, there's some old guy, I can't remember his name. He's just screaming on that thing, and it's not corny either. You can play great stuff on it, but most people didn't.
Nice. Well, so those are the 3 songs that you wrote with Gaudreau. Let's take it from the top and talk about the opening track, Danger, which is a Martha and a Tim song. And let's see that album cover too.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about that as well.
This is by Duggie Fields.
Yes.
He died a few years ago. He's an English artist, obviously an artist.
It's good.
In the back, this was done in the top of a hotel in Pasadena, California. We showed up there, the photographer. A lot of people thought I only had one arm because of the way I was holding my arm, but I in fact have 2 arms. And while we were up there, it was about noon. We saw this car drive up. We looked over that little balcony, and this businessman and a very attractive woman got out of the car and went straight into a hotel room. And we continued filming, taking photos, and then we look out there 40 minutes later, and they're leaving.
Well, let's talk about the front cover while we're here. It's a piece called Acquired Mannerisms, and Duggie Fields is the artist. And if you, I don't know if you happen to have it handy. Do you have the first album at hand there? Because it'd be great to hold them up to side by side, because there's a kind of a connection in that there's a female form on both of them.
You're right. Well, I could run to the next room if you want me to, but
no, that's all right.
We'll imagine it's another woman standing there.
Yeah, the old leather lady, well-tanned leather lady standing in front of a swimming pool at the motel photograph. And now we have an art piece, which is this lady is quite a bit more stylish, shall we say.
Very much. This was this painting was in a book called, it was about post-World War II British art, and how after World War II, the art was, and fashion and everything from dishes to everything was like, the war's over, let's go wild. And Duggie went pretty wild. This is exactly a painting, and Capitol added this lettering to try to mimic this. And they did such a good job, Duggie got really upset that they did that, because it looked like he had painted it and he didn't. It was like they were messing with his art.
Yeah, that's not part of the piece.
No, it's not.
And the tchotchkes along the left side, along the left margin.
This is all Duggie Fields, the whole thing.
Okay.
Very bondage and very strange.
Well, and so did that directly connect with anything going on with anybody in the band at the time? I mean, are there like specific reasons why that image was chosen to illustrate or to be a private inside joke about something that was going on in the band, like the bondage thing? Maybe I'm just projecting here, but
No, there's zero connection. The only connection,
darn.
yeah, I wish I could help you there. Martha was a bohemian type person, and she looked through art books and she saw that and she went, I want that to be the album cover. And Capitol said, okay. And that was that. We met
Okay.
Duggie later. He came to LA and I bought one of his art pieces, but Duggie was cool. He really sweated. He was quite a craftsman. So it was just,
that was not a commission piece, so that's something that existed, right?
yeah, it was in a book. I have
Yeah.
a copy of it, the Austerity Binge or Post, whatever it is. It's a book.
At what point did he find out it was being used as an album cover?
When they asked permission to use it.
Well, they would have to, yes.
Yes, and I don't know the financial thing, but he was happy that it wasn't just printed, that it was on an album, and it was, he liked the band, he liked the music.
Well, that's a plus.
And there, you know, his artwork is being reproduced and sent around the world. So he was happy about it.
Yeah.
But it was strictly Martha's taste. She just liked it, and I liked it too. And you know, we had shirts made up with all these atomic molecule things all over them. I don't have it anymore.
I remember that in the PR department, they sent out little buttons of the lady form, just the cutout of a lady that people could wear. I don't recall anybody ever actually wearing one, but it was still a pretty cool button.
Yeah, I have one of those. I think I had to buy it on eBay.
Oh my goodness.
And I also have a big cutout of her. Capitol had this cutout. It's about 3 feet tall, and I have about 5 of those.
Nice.
Still. So the songs.
Yeah, back to the tracks. Danger is a Martha Tim song. It's actually the lead off track. So
yeah, Martha wrote Danger all by herself. This was her song. She wrote it on guitar. She remembered hearing that song Fire that Bruce Springsteen wrote, that the Pointer Sisters covered.
Right.
She thought, oh, a one-word title. What about Danger? Danger, fire. She pitched it to the Pointer Sisters, and they didn't record it, so we recorded it. I don't know why they didn't, but it was with them in mind, or maybe she wrote it and said maybe they could do it.
Yeah, they might not have wanted to do it because it was too similar to the other one.
Yeah, who knows why, but I'm glad that we did it. And we did it, and it had that little keyboard part. It was this little pumpy bass sound, boom, 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 which I've always enjoyed playing.
Yes.
We play that. We'll be playing that in a few weeks. It's another song that goes over great live.
I think that's actually one of the coolest bass parts on any Motel song is the bass part on this one, on Danger.
It's really just R&B. It's just straight R&B. Rhythm and blues. Envy. Tim McGovern wrote Envy. He played this in the pop. That's
I was going to say that's a pop song.
And it was fully formed. He came, showed us what to do. He said in an interview, I wrote this at a time where I did not have a girlfriend, a car, or money. And so in the scene, he's on, everybody wants my baby, everybody wants my car, everybody wants my money. Great story. That was a real shredder. Like when he got going on guitar and the band in the studio, when we got going with him, he could play lead guitar. Still can.
That was one of the tour de force tunes live as well.
Mm-hmm. Careful, we've talked about. I was so happy to have a song on an album.
Now, was this your first co-write? You didn't have any co-writes on the first album?
No, I didn't. I came up with a musical part in one song. It was the part I came up with in Porn Reggae, but that's not a write. That's just you like think of all the things that the Motown players came up with. They didn't write the song, but it had a part of it. It was certainly a part of the song.
Right.
Bonjour Baby. Again, it's a song pretty much about nothing. And
Jerry Seinfeld, take a lesson.
Yeah, but it's the first song we wrote. Bonjour Baby. I just love that word, baby.
Right.
Now, Party Professionals. Martha had come up with this. The lyrics are great. It's all about people that are professional partiers. We rehearsed this
Making the
song.
scene.
Hmm?
Making the scene.
Yeah, very much. We were at Capitol, and it was Studio C. It was a tiny studio that was really small, that had stuff stored in it. It didn't have a PA, and we were in there banging away. It had a grand piano and no PA, and we were in there beating away on it, rehearsing it. I still have the tape, and we just had the idea for it. Martha had the chords, and I was coming up with that keyboard riff and all this stuff. I remember next door in this mixing suite was who's the guy that did Cats and wrote all those musicals? He's Lloyd,
Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Andrew Lloyd Webber was in there mixing. I think it was called Mass. It was some religious thing. Never saw him. He's just
right.
He's just working away. Go, that's Andrew Lloyd Webber. So we recorded Party Professionals there, and we rehearsed in there. And then
juxtaposition.
Yeah, it is funny.
Studio Mass and one studio Party Professionals. Right.
Hard to forget about that. Now on this one, I took a sax solo, and what I was trying to do, and I failed, was there's a lick that John Coltrane plays in flamenco sketches on Kind of Blue, and it's just this run, and it's in there somewhere if you bother to listen. It's there if you don't. And I tried to do that at the beginning of my sax solo, and it isn't that you're copying what you're trying to copy. It's that was the influence you're using to try to play a sax solo, and it filters through you, but your influence isn't someone else. It's John Coltrane. So you've got some good basic structure, but of course it goes through your own filter, and it's not going to come out like Coltrane. It shouldn't anyway. And
it shouldn't.
I just remember that specifically, and I've done this, and other sax players do this. You're trying to do A, and it's filtered through B, which is you, and it comes out C. It's just the way it works. But it's who you're choosing to listen to is a huge part of it.
Right. The source material A is very critical.
Right. It would be like reading really good books and then trying to write a book, as opposed to just reading beach novels. And I guess you could write a beach novel. Nothing wrong with that. But
yeah,
I was listening to Coltrane late. I was not really a jazz player. Days Are Okay, But the Nights Were Made for Love. That's, I think, this starts the second side, but
that's another Tim solo right.
Yeah, that was cool. We tried to have a hit. It was supposed to be a hit. And what I did with that, I was a bit of an idiot savant with idiots, the key word, with keyboards. Just trying to get me a little loose, and I just mess around, and they go, give them a chance. So on this Prophet keyboard, if you held down your little finger and your thumb on the keyboard, you get an octave. And what I do is I would go through this button. It was a bank button, and it had a bank button, and on each bank there was 8 sounds, and there were 4 banks. So whatever was up, I just held my fingers down and went bang on, bang on. I pushed this down, and it went through 4 different sounds. Every time I pushed a button, it would go. So I was going boom, 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 boom. So at the beginning, it's just me running through 4 random Prophet synthesizer sounds. It's just so bizarre. So that's how it started out, and then I go to other parts. That was really fun. And Crybaby, we've talked about that.
Yeah,
it's a tremendous guitar solo from Tim on that, and that's a real thrasher. That's going to be our encore song on the next shows we do.
Nice.
Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
I mean, we're almost done with the songs. So Whose Problem is the funniest song Martha ever wrote. Whose problem am I if I'm not yours? I mean, just that alone. And it cracked me up so bad. I was playing this really dumb keyboard part, and what we did is we just had a lot of emptiness in it. We thought there's not enough songs with just drums and bass for a few measures, and then parts come in like every 8 bars or every 4 bars. It's just this wash.
Needs some air.
Yeah, and I'm just playing this alto sax in the background, wailing away. I think I was singing Trouble Man by Marvin Gaye. If you listen to Trouble Man way in the back, it sounds like it's in the next room. Some guy's just blowing his brains on the sax.
Yeah, nice echo on that too.
Yeah, that was fun. And then People, Places, and Things. That was a song that the first lineup of the band did. We played that in Wong's when Jeff was in the band. Martha had written it long ago. And I believe we tried to cut it, or we did cut it with the first album. I believe it's available on some anthology as an alternate take. It was a great cut. It just didn't make the cut of the songs on the first album. It's another raver. And then at the end, Slow Town. It's just a strange song. It's a bit rather orchestral and has this thing in the middle where I play the melody with a whistle sound and a harpsichord sound at the same time, and it's real spooky sounding. And it changes key. It goes to the verse after that. And Martha was talking about, he hit me and it felt like a kiss, how that song goes to a different key for a part, and when it goes back to the original key, that's another change. It's pretty sophisticated, really. And I remember doing the overdubs at Studio 55. That French horn sound at the end was Richard Perry's studio.
Mm-hmm.
It was on Melrose somewhere. And I'm playing sax at the very end, but because it's a rock record, they make sure the last thing you hear on that album is Tim McGovern playing this screaming guitar lead, so it doesn't end with a sax, even though there's a sax fade. And that thus ends Careful. We recorded it quick, and that was the most fun I had recording.
Really?
Yeah, which doesn't matter. I mean, what matters is the album. But
yeah,
for the experience of me, it was the most fun because I had my legs in the studio. I'd been there, and it wasn't going through all this drama that happened in later albums.
Well, it seems you were also more creatively involved in the arrangements and coming up with parts, and that's making more contributions on that level as well.
That's exactly what it is. I contributed whatever I had, for better or worse. I was being asked by the producer to write songs with my partner, Michael Goodrow, and please write songs. And I'm thinking, who wouldn't want to be in this situation? It's not like you need to place them. They're already placed, just write them. And it was a band. These are the people that played on that. That was it. This is the lineup. We're writing the songs. It's all inside. We don't have outside songwriters. It's a sealed tuna sandwich, as Frank Zappa would say. This is it. Right. And I was just a joyous time, and I was 26 years old, and it was just
so this sessions wrapped up in May, and there were some local dates in the weeks before the June 9th release, and then a ton of touring. My God, your touring schedule after the release of Careful was pretty insane. The entire year of 1980, I think, was probably the band's most intense, wouldn't you say?
Yes, that's when I thought I was finally in the big time, even though it was the second album and I'd been playing music a long time in my life, but not in a setting with a record label and a band and all that stuff. It can be summed up in one word: the Cars tour. The Cars, they recorded this album. In fact, when we played in Boston in '79, we met the Cars because they were from Boston. They were real friendly because we were new wave and they were new wave, and they would hang out at the Paradise Club, and they'd always hang out in full stage gear. It's just a club, and they're hanging out like they're on stage. Oh, that guy's in the Cars. They were super friendly. And so I hung out when they were recording this album, Panorama. They were recording it in LA, and I hung out a bit with Greg Hawkes. I brought Greg Hawkes to Capitol one day, and he was wearing these really cool clothes. I said, I'm going to go to Capitol. You want to come? And go, sure, let me change. And he takes off and he puts on a Mickey Mouse t-shirt. I go, okay, to each his own.
He dressed down for the occasion.
Yeah. So this tour, it was Panorama. I believe it was the biggest summer tour in the US that there was, in terms of just attendance. And they were super hot by then. It was their third album or whatever it was. It wasn't their greatest album, but we toured. We were open for them for 2.5 months. We were the opening act. It was the Cars and the Motels. And this is when I thought I was in the big time, because it was full on, playing stadiums and everything. We started in August 23rd in Denver. Ottawa, Toronto, Charlevoix, Michigan. These were outdoor summer things, so you could play outdoor shows with these beautiful, summer fest. Cleveland.
You want to hear I got to jump in here really fast before we get too farther. I did the press kits for both the first two Motels albums when I was at Capitol. I went to Elektra in the summer of 1980. And one of the first things that I did was the press kit for Panorama.
Yeah. Oh,
Great.
yeah. Us doing that. Well, they
All
got
right, so back to the schedule. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's enough interesting. But like, this was my calendar. You don't have to see the dates, but that was every circle is a gig, and that was September, and then this is October, and then this is November,
Yikes.
and this is December. So yes, that was a huge tour. We played all over the place. Then we went to England, separate from that.
Right.
We ended up in England. I remember hanging out with. We just met some people there, and I was hanging out with Marianne Faithfull, and there's all these hipsters hanging out. It was very exciting. That was a huge year for us. Then I got
3-minute warning, 2.5 minutes. So a couple of singles. The album actually did better than the first one. What was your sense of where the band was after the release of the second album and after the tour that took up all the rest of 1980?
Well, we ended near Christmas, so I was kind of sick physically from all that touring. We were just overdoing everything, and I had my luggage stolen, everything except a pair of jeans from the LAX airport. But I thought, wow, this is getting some momentum. The band we're going in the right direction, which is up from 179 on the charts. One of these songs was in France charted in some way. It might have been Danger, but it was getting actual airplay.
Right.
I figured we just make another record. And that was the one that was Apocalypso that turned into All for One.
Right.
But I was thinking this is about as good a year as I can have in terms of recording and writing and touring. It looks really frantic, but when you're 26 and you're traveling that much, you go, this is exactly what I wanted to do. Growing up in Florida.
This lineup with with the new guitar player worked out pretty well then for the second record and tour.
Yeah, Tim was great. He was a great performer. And there's a live BBC Goes to College, Rock Goes to College in Manchester University. There's a full concert you can see on YouTube to get an idea of that.
Great.
Yeah, Rock Goes to College. Anyway, it was a great playing live with Tim and the band was wonderful. Real showman too.
Yeah, he was. Well, Marty, thanks again. It's great talking with you and recapping the second record this time. And we'll see you on the next one.
You will. Thanks for asking.
My pleasure.